Hello and welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements. And today I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Tobias Hooton. So Tobias is a technology evangelist, serial entrepreneur with a career to date spanning global corporates, governments, defence sector and high-tech startups. As a young school leaver, Tobias forged his own career in a global technical stage from grassroots through to established credible CEO. With a background in internet service provider, network design and security, Tobias has led teams and grown businesses from startup to scale up, building and supporting global internet provider networks, software development, financial services applications development, and most recently Web 3.0 and blockchain-backed fabrics. Tobias is a genuine innovator, a focused, passionate technologist with a relentless drive and ambition to match. And what I love is you're also such a real family man and come from a huge desire to do the right thing. So I love that you are authentically you, and that's why you are going to be such an amazing guest. So Tobias, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a delight to have you here. And what an amazing journey that you've had already. So can I ask you to start by sharing with us a little bit of your journey so far, please?
Of course, yeah. So I started my career in technology the slightly unorthodox way. And it started for me at about 11, 12, 13 years old. I remember my father bringing home the first home PC with his tiny little Toshiba laptop that he'd been given from work, and being interested in that. And when I was much younger, there was a website that used to be called Rent-A-Coder, whereby people would put out things like, I can't get a particular spreadsheet to work, and somebody help me, you earn a $5. I just started playing with that from quite a young age, and eventually expanded years ago my own sort of software repertoire, if you like. And I bumped into a project which was for a company which is called LMX, which is now part of IBM. And they put out a request for somebody to build a printer driver to get something working. I thought, I'll have a go at that. So I did. I didn't realize at the time that particular project was a scouted project, was actually a seed project that had been put out there to test people's skill sets in driver design for networking effectively. So that's where my initial sort of foray into technology started, very much from a software development background, but in these sort of little micro projects. Left school, GCSE age, wasn't very interested in progressing my career further into A-levels and into university. At the time, it wasn't what was right for me. So I went to go and work for a business that supplied the defence sector IPC, so taking hardware and software and integrating the two, and became quite good at that, and ended up leading a team through a series of events, a secondment from BAE, part of the Ministry of Defence, and then spent some time in different parts of the world working in networking and security as part of that IPC division. And then from there, I decided actually that there was a space in the market for me to potentially do things a little bit differently, taking that skill set of sort of network security and hardware and bringing the two together. So having done that for 4 or 5 years, we started the first business, which was initially supplying the data center and security marketplaces with a product. And that company did quite well. I was fortunate enough to exit that in 2014. Since then, my journey has very much been taking startup challenger companies and growing them on the global stage in different parts of the connectivity landscape. So be that service providers, be that professional services firms, managed services providers, but all in more boutique areas. So none of the companies that I've run or led are sort of big overarching MSPs. They tend to be boutique and specific startups. And that's led to the current businesses, which is a cybersecurity firm, which is using the best of all of my skill sets, certainly in the leadership that I've learnt, and the cultural challenges of working with very smart technology and software people, and they have some specific requirements, let's say. Melding that into a cybersecurity firm is very interesting right now. And then the other project we have launching, which is about to go for Series A, is a global connectivity fabric, but built with a blockchain encryption mechanism in the back of it. And looking at really the next level of capacity, so sort of 400 gig, 800 gig and above for these massive global CDN providers. So my background's always been in technology. I'm very much a tech guy and work quite practically within that, but yeah, certainly didn't start out the typical way.
No, and I love that despite not starting out the typical way, look where you've got. So it really lens to the fact that there's more than one route to your destination, isn't there? And it's the destination that kind of counts. And I think sometimes we can get a little bit lost when the journey that's mapped out for us doesn't quite work for us, doesn't quite fit. Is that,
Yeah.
how did you find that, and then making that break to find your own journey?
Very difficult early on. I think the best way for me to describe my early parts of the career was completely unfocused. I didn't know quite what part of an industry I wanted to work in. And this is 15 years ago. So the technology landscape moves so fast. By the time you've thought about what it is you want to go and achieve and do, it's moved on 2 years, and you're left behind all the time. There's also an element of proving ground. So once you found yourself, I found myself at a time dealing with part of NCR as part of, it's actually a division of Barclays. We're looking at when contactless payments were first coming, and everyone's like, this is the next big thing, it's going to be fantastic. And I pointed out that with a £3 USB receiver I bought from Maplin's at the time, plugged into a laptop, I could pick up the card transaction from sat in a cafe. And it's very difficult to prove yourself when you're much younger. I mean, I had two things on my side. A, I was in my early 20s, late teens. And B, landing these sort of conversations in much larger companies, and me going, okay, well, this is a really obvious problem. And these companies saying, well, why should we take you seriously? And for me, the answer is simple: because there's a problem. But that was really a barrier to entry, was finding out how to come across, how to communicate at that level early on, and learning that not everyone will see you for your skill set. There is a certain amount of what you look like and the accolades that you have as to whether they'll take you seriously or not. And that was a challenge early on. Yeah,
it can be hard, can't it? Because unfortunately, particularly in some of those industries, and I worked in financial services and IT software for most of my career, and I think they did come with a, why should I listen to you? Have you built your? I remember being told years ago, you don't have the gravitas and you don't have the vocabulary to be as successful as you should be. So go away and learn those. So I did, and then realised nobody understood me. Well, the board did, but none of the people that I led understood me anymore, because I was coming up with ridiculous words. So they were like, "What do you mean?" Because it was trying to fit that mould, wasn't it? And what's great is you've been able to make that mold your own. So instead go, actually, no, I'm going to talk to you authentically, but here's the problem, here's the challenge, and actually here's how I can help fix it, which is really a fascinating way of kind of driving that technology change. So what would you say is the thing that you're proudest of so far?
I think my proudest moment so far was taking my first proper business, let's say, from being one employee, i.e. me, to my first proper paid employee, who is still a long-standing and good friend of mine now. That for me was a tick in the box that said, you're doing something right, and you're at the point where you can take on responsibilities of other people as well, and their families, and provide for them too. I think for me, that was a moment of, okay, yeah, you know what you're doing now. You've made this into a serious business, and you've made that first step, and you then go on to employ 150 people. But the first person is, I think, the first major tick in the box of, this is an achievement now. You feel like you've actually done something and taken something from being more than just an idea in your head and into something that's actually other people want, which is, that's a fantastic position to be in.
Amazing. And you're right, it's such a responsibility as well, isn't it? Because you are now responsible for somebody else's livelihood, and as if it was bad enough being responsible for your own, that comes with both the joy of feeling like you've been able to add value and give back, but also really underlines the responsibility you're taking and running that organisation, doesn't it? That you've now got these people that are relying on you to make sure that it keeps going well, so that they can continue to prosper.
Absolutely, yeah. And also creating the space for people to evolve and grow as well. That's another responsibility. It's not solely about creating the profit for them to be paid. We're only a part of somebody's journey in life for a moment in their career. And for that time in their career, we have to support them both financially, but also for their moment in life. So trying to create the space for people to either grow technologically or grow with their skill sets or have family time. These are other responsibilities I think are really important, that when you're leading a business or you're leading a young startup company, you factor that into your planning as well. Those sorts of pressures are quite unique when you're 20 years old. So, yeah.
But it's that whole culture piece, isn't it? Because we want people to grow and evolve and thrive. Because only when our people grow, evolve and thrive does our business really grow, evolve and thrive. Because we need to develop each other to be ready for the next stage, don't we? For the next part of that evolution. And that whole piece around creating a space where people are cared for in all of their requirements, you know, their ability to grow, like you said, technologically, or about their leadership skills, or about their soft skills, or just about their work-life balance and being able to get those parts in. It's so crucial, isn't it, that we create that right space. Is there any things you can share with us about how you've been able to do that so successfully in all your organisations?
Yeah, make a lot of mistakes, get a lot of things wrong. I'm a Virgo, so I like things in straight lines. I like boxes and I like order. But at the same time, organized chaos is a really good thing. So one of the early things that we did in all of the businesses was to become hypercritical about what are we actually trying to achieve and why are we doing it a certain way? Why are we making this decision? So we use the standard why test, ask why 3 times in a row. If you can still answer it, it sounds like it should be a good idea. And sort of take that a little bit further and say, well, actually, why are we doing a certain thing? Why are we building processes that only support our team, but don't actually support our customers? So really trying to peel away the layers and understand exactly what we're trying to achieve. And then once we have the essence of exactly what we're trying to achieve as an output, turning the company on its head and saying the company is entirely output focused. We don't actually care about how you get to that point. We create the space for you to use your own thought processes, patterns, people, whatever else you need to get to that end point. But we turn the whole company upside down and say, right, we are focused on the output of this particular thing. And lots of companies say they are output focused, and they are. But what they mean by that is they are work rate output focused. They are not necessarily product or service focused. So you find that some, especially technical startup companies, have these long extrapolated processes in place that are all designed to support the business operation as opposed to the customer. And we learned that the hard way, right? I mean, we lost customers because we built processes that didn't work. But there was also no playbook. There was no operations handbook for young tech software startup. This is the process you should do. So we had to go and find that. And we also found that things like the standard processes of things like ITIL just didn't work in our industries where we were playing as well. So it was having that state of mind to really peel away as much of the layers as we could to get to the essence of what we were trying to achieve and to ask all those difficult questions along the way.
I love that. It sounds like such a simple thing, but it's actually so vital. I mean, I spent 30 years making a career out of asking what I used to call the dim girl questions, like going in and going, what is that? Why are we doing that like that? I'm just interested. Just tell me. Because actually that's where you usually found that there was so much waste in a process, because we've been doing it that way because somebody told us to, and it had become gospel that you needed to do it, but it added no value to the customer. It added no value to the colleague. It probably added no value to the business. It just got lost in the mire of how businesses grow, isn't it? And their processes develop. So I love all of that. So what would you say has been your biggest lesson so far?
Oh, biggest lesson. You can lose everything overnight. If you're not absolutely on the pulse, you can lose everything overnight. I think for me, the biggest lesson is really not listening to all the advice out there. And that sounds really pig-headed in a way and arrogant, which is certainly not something I want to come across as, but there is a lot of advice, certainly in today's landscape, in the business world. You look at LinkedIn, you look at Twitter, you look at anything, there's experts, there's specialists, it's full of noise about stuff. And I know, having tried and spoken to a great many mentors and colleagues and friends and other very successful business people, that actually we all do things very differently. And that trying to take a particular piece of advice and wedging it in doesn't actually work. So, for me, not listening as such has been a really powerful tool, and having the confidence to carve your own way of doing something without taking some of the advice, and allowing yourself the space to do that as well, and to make those mistakes is really being critical to the success that we've had so far.
I love that. Giving yourself space to make the mistakes is crucial, because we have to learn for ourselves. I mean, you've got children, I've got children. You'd love to wrap them up in cotton wool, wouldn't you, and hope that they never make a mistake. But actually, they need to learn for themselves how they overcome. And obviously, we try and stop them making any really harmful or really difficult ones. But there has to be that element of allowing them to grow. And I think that's true as we're adults, isn't it? We have to be able to make our own mistakes and learn from them and find our own path through. There is so much advice. I was talking to some clients recently who are getting ready for investment, and you go and talk to different investors, and some go, oh, I want the team up front, and there's like, no, I want the team at the back. And it's like, oh my God, you're never gonna make it work for everybody. You're just gonna have to go with what feels right, that you can stand in front of and be proud of and say, I think this is good. I think this is something that I can stand by. But
absolutely.
When you're taking that leap of faith, when you're following your own path, is there any advice you could give for those moments where you start to doubt yourself?
Yeah, there's plenty of moments where you wake up at 3 a.m. with and you can't sleep and you worry about paying the bills and the rest of it. When running companies and when you're working in and on at the same time, there's a lot of things that draw your attention. And I've found more recently, it's been important for me to have one grounding position, something I can go back to that is a constant. And that could be in work or out of work. For me, it's always been within the sphere of work. I like to divide home and work quite clearly, but I've always found that to get through some of those more difficult situations and to maintain that forward momentum, I've always had one sort of grounding point, idea, theory, focus to go to that is tangible, so you can measure your movement towards it. But I've always found that for me, having something to go back to as an idea or a process or something to ground yourself with is really important to maintain that focus.
I love that. Such great advice. There was a study a few years ago by the Harvard University, and they were looking into people who wrote down goals. And they identified that in this group that they studied, 87% hadn't got a written down goal. So they might have a goal, but it wasn't written down anywhere. And only 3% had got a written down goal with an action plan, even if it was a rubbish action plan, but they had an action plan. And yet when they came back to them later on, I think it was about 12 months later when they went and checked on them, the 3% that had got the goal and the action plan, so they'd got something tangible that they were coming back to, had outperformed everybody else tenfold. So even if it's not the right plan, even if it's not the right piece, just the fact that you've got that focus, that you're giving your subconscious brain Direction, because we think everything's in our thinking brain, and yet it's our subconscious brain that drives us, isn't it? So great advice on that, having that something to anchor yourself back to, so that you can keep yourself honest on whether or not you're on track or off track. Would that be fair?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you see the normal sort of the corporate mission statement and the vision statement. And for me, it can be something as simple as, we're trying to protect companies. It can be whatever it needs to be. But actually, when there's so much noise, it's just something to bring you back to a centering point. So actually, okay, yes, I'm just going to check myself. What are we actually trying to do again? And does it actually make any sense? And why am I worrying about that thing over there? That's completely left field. Forget about that. Come back to here again, please. And I've been through the sleepless nights. I've been through the 2 or 3 years of difficult companies. I've taken companies through the COVID pandemic. And we've all lost companies as well. So I understand the pressures. But for me, having that constant grounding point, having that thing to bring me back to a center has been really important.
I love that, because we need it, don't we? When we're in those moments of turmoil, having something that you can cling on to allows you to take a moment of pause and therefore reflect and see where there might be an opportunity to move. And it is devastating when you lose a company, and the impact that has on the people that were in it, and that lays heavy, doesn't it, as a leader, when you've been involved in that and that responsibility. So being able to give yourself that grounding is vital, I think, to success. So when you have had to go through those challenging times, what advice could you give us about how you handle it for the people that you're taking through those journeys as well. You've talked about COVID, you've talked about losing companies. There's got to have been some really hard conversations to have with the impact on the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, people in my family, I take things very, very personally. Openness and honesty, and real openness and honesty as well. I mean, plenty of leaders will provide the honest truth, but only a part of it. If things are good, if they say they're good. If they're bad, tell people they're bad. Most people can tolerate the truth if it's explained correctly and all the facts and figures are set out. And then I'll allow people to ask questions. No closed doors. The only way we've got companies through very difficult times has been sitting people down and saying, look, this is going really, really well. This is going really, really badly. This isn't going to work. There's going to be some problems, and these are going to be the problems. This is what we're going to do about them. But, stick with us, but we're being open with you so that you know all the information and you can make your own decisions if you need to. I think that openness and transparency and plain language, clarity of communication is really key. Yes, it's a basic respect thing, of course, but actually using simple language, being very clear, very direct, which is something I've been known for now. But if it's good, I'll tell you it's good. If it's bad, I'll tell you it's bad. But that has to be something that you use as a tool, and it should be expected of you anyway.
I love that. It's that real authenticity, isn't it? And treating people like adults, letting them know all of the information, and then they can deal with the hand that they've been dealt. They can make their choices because they're informed. And I think often we, as leaders, we don't inform people. We don't give them all of the information, or we make it so opaque that they actually can't work out what it was we were trying to tell them anyway. And we can feel really good that we told them. Well, yeah, they can't actually work it out. So I love that actually it was about that honesty, about that openness, and about that respecting them with the information to allow them to make an informed choice of what worked for them.
Yeah.
And that allows them then to be owning that position, doesn't it? Being able to feel like they're in control. Because I think that's one of the largest challenges when people are faced with these situations is they feel out of control and they feel like they lack respect, because we tend not to spend that time listening to them, giving them a chance to tell us how they feel. How's this making you feel? What concerns is it bringing you? Takes a special skill, and one that, quite rightly, like you say, should be in all leaders, but unfortunately isn't in all of them, is it? It can be quite uncomfortable, I guess.
No, and I found that firsthand as well. Sometimes there are strategies being played out, but that's just the part of business. I think we've also employed skills such as we get the teams to buy into decision making as well. So very, very early on, if we've got an idea, we'll open forum it, and properly open forum it too. This is an idea. This is how we think we're going to fund it. This is what we think the market return is going to be. This is the decision we're going to make to do that. These are the sorts of people that we need. Do we think it's a good idea or a bad idea? It might be a case that actually we change tack slightly. It might be a case that we've missed something, but we involve our people throughout the whole process, both on the way in and on the way out. So everyone's aware of why we've made a decision. And if it's not gone very well, then we'll explain as to why. But yeah, I think it should be a basic expectation, I think, of good leaders, is to have that ability to communicate clearly and be open and honest to people at all times, through good times and bad.
I completely agree. And I think for me, what's great in there as well is the extra part of that communication is being able to listen and take on board feedback as well, so that the communication is not just one way, it's two way, which you've clearly demonstrated in kind of what you're doing in your cultures. It's not just a case of making sure as the leader you're sharing what we're doing and where we're going, but you're seeking their input and you're listening to their input and their advice and shaping it together. And I think that is a vital additional skill, isn't it, for leaders today?
It is, yeah, absolutely is. And also the other point is for us is real critical thinking. If you bring people into teams that don't have the same level of maybe critical thinking, or haven't had the exposure to understanding how to do that, then bring them up to speed. Provide the training, provide the knowledge, provide the support, so that everyone is on that level playing field, so they can feel comfortable asking the same questions. They do know how to receive that information too. So yeah, these are important points.
Yeah, I love it. So you've already shared like so much with us, but if you had to go back and give young Tobias some advice, what do you know now that you wish you'd known then?
A very good friend of mine who is the ex-CEO of an extremely large telecommunications company, he said to me, you'll get to a point in technology at some point where everyone is interested in you and you won't see it coming and it will look like a good idea. And I think that for me would have been good advice a long time ago. Actually, if you're doing something and you're doing well at it and you're enjoying the way you're doing something and you're happy in your position, then don't deviate, don't change. Just because somebody else has an opinion or a suggestion that you might improve the way you're doing something, or you might grow to the next level, or you might complete a merger or wherever it is, you don't have to listen to that. I think for me, having the foresight to understand that earlier on in my career would have been beneficial at times. In the last 10 years have been very interesting, but at times that check and balance would have been required, I think. So yeah, I would have appreciated understanding earlier on that advice, I think, from my good friend, certainly.
I love that. That's such great advice, isn't it? Because we're supposed to do what makes our soul sing. We're supposed to do the things that bring us joy and bring us happiness, as long as they're kind, they're doing good things for other people. But often, we lose our way on that, don't we? We lose our way from doing the things that actually ignite us with fire. And one of the things I spend a lot of time with my clients doing is the do, delegate, and dump. What do you have to do? Because actually, either it's the thing that brings you joy, or because you're the only one that knows how to do it. What can you delegate and what can you dump? Because actually it adds no value to anybody. So just stop letting it steal your day. And it's amazing when you take that step back and re-look at what's going on in your world, where you can see actually there is space, that there's always space. We just fill it sometimes with things that might not be the best use of that space.
Yeah, there's plenty of people filling their time with things I think they should be doing, not actually delivering any benefit to themselves, first of all, but anybody else as well. The process of actually understanding, do I need to do this? Should I delegate it, or should I just get rid of it? Is something that people need to learn and should be really critical about. Delegation, people find very, very hard from experience, in my experience anyway. But yeah, certainly some people do fill their time with doing things that aren't necessarily good for themselves or productive.
Yeah. And I think, what you've already shared with I think you said it was the 3 why. I used to call it the 5 why theory, the bit like when you turn into a toddler and you're like, why?
Yeah.
Why? And if you can get to the 5th level of why, and that's when you get to the real crux of why you're actually doing it. And that's when you have to go, am I still happy with that decision? Do I still agree that this is where I'm heading? Or actually, is this now telling me that I need to go and do something else? So I think having that passion for being curious, it sounds like, the thing that underpins how you've lived your life so far is that curiosity. So why is that like that? And why couldn't we make it better? Why couldn't we fix it? Why are we doing it this way? Would that be a fair summary, that you're driven by a curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm naturally inquisitive anyway. I have a fairly analytical mind, and I want to understand how things work. And the way I learn is I need to understand how something works at the low level to be able to then do it. I've learned as I've got older and led larger companies that actually I don't need to know everything at all. I need to know the benefit and the outcome of what it's delivering, not how it works. So that's certainly something I think, again, with age.
I love that, because I was very similar. When I first started out, I was the kid that had to break the toy to work out how it worked, put it back together, and then I was okay, and we could share the toy. But when you move up in leadership, you suddenly get to the stage where you can't actually do it. You just have to trust that they can do it, because you're leading on a much greater scale. Is there any advice for people that are making that step, that are going from being a leader that was able to know how to do it and therefore was comfortable that they had more knowledge, to one that's just actually leading, and therefore what they bring to the table is their leadership skills and their ability to direct?
Yeah, definitely. Just because you've got a certain way of doing something doesn't mean it's the right way of doing something anymore. And there's a lot of value to be found in having other people tell you the way that they're doing things. You may or may not disagree with it. and you may or may not find their value there, but there is absolutely value in listening and understanding fully why other people do things a certain way and the outcomes that it's had. I think if you get to the point where you are refusing to understand and to adopt other people's methodologies or processes or principles, you've lost the battle. Just quit, because you're not in receiving mode at that point there. You can no longer learn. So I think it's really valuable to listen to other people and to understand and have that inquisitive mindset to understand how they are doing something, why they are doing it, and the benefits that it's bringing them, and also to share the way that you are doing things as well back with them too. So just because somebody's been a veteran of the industry for 40 years and they know it inside out doesn't mean that they're necessarily at the same position that you are right now, spotting the things that you are spotting. And we've done that with very large companies, some of our suppliers, partners, customers. And we've got global travel insurance companies that we've worked with in the past. And just because our approach has been one way doesn't mean their approach doesn't work the same way. So it's really important that you share that knowledge and process and then make your own decisions from that.
I love it. That's such great advice, because it is too often we listen to interject, not to understand. But when we open our mind to listen to understand, and then we share, then we all learn, don't we? We all can grow and we can develop. And we might find something in the middle. We go, actually, it's not your way or my way. It's this new way that's a little bit of both that actually creates a brand new path for us all.
Absolutely, yeah. That point that you mentioned there, that pause moment, that reflection point is really important. And it's certainly something that I've found useful as I've been in very difficult, high conflict situations, and that's been at different points in my career so far. But just taking that time to go, right, silence. No phones, no laptops, no nothing. I'm going to take a cup of coffee, I'm going to sit in the garden for 5 minutes and just think about what's happened. And just take my point back to that grounding position again and go, okay, that's all well and good, but how do we move past this? I found that what's helped me and kept me going is taking that space, creating that time for reflection, and then also helping others to do the same thing, because we don't listen enough. We talk an awful lot, and actually taking that time out to understand, compute, draw down, rationalize, and then make decisions from that distilled point is really critical when leading scale-up businesses, especially with all the noise there is out there now.
I love that. That is such great advice, because as human beings, unfortunately, what happens is we don't respond to what's happening. We respond to what we've made it mean. So whenever we get into those moments of conflict, we're all dealing with the emotion, not the fact. So when we can take ourselves away for a moment and go, okay, what's happening and what am I making it mean? And now how can I bring it back to what's happening and deal with that and then come back to it? It just changes the whole outcome, doesn't it? Because it allows you to come from that centered position. Amazing advice. I could literally chat to you all day. But, so I'm definitely going to have to get you back on. But how can people get in touch with you and learn more?
Email me, toby@tobyhooton.com. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Tobias Hooton. I respond to text, call, email. I work 24/7. So yeah, reach out.
Fab. I will make sure all of those details are in the show notes. Tobias, it has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to having you on again soon if you're up for it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing such great sage advice.